it's so shocking, actually, because for what she is accused to have done in the McCloskeys, instructing an investigator to disassemble the firearm, to reassemble it so that it's functional, so they can press charges, weaponizing the indictment of the McCloskeys to fundraise off of it, to see this accusation of what she is accused to have done 3 years ago to Eric Greitens. I mean, I made the joke, success leaves clues, and so does corruption. It explains a lot. And it's an amazing thing. But what I find the most amazing about it is how the mainstream media that's reporting on it doesn't understand a thing. It is apparent on its face. They don't understand a thing of what they're reporting, because I'm reading the articles and I'm reading them and just saying, I don't get anything of what they're saying, and I sort of understand the base level stuff. The whole funny thing, Tamika Hart was the juror in the Roger Stone case, and that was why it slipped. That was why it slipped out. It's the media does not understand what they're reporting, and in being unable to understand what they're reporting, they just repeat the same 30,000-foot overview, innocuous, useless, non-instructive. There's an ethics complaint, and as a lawyer, she could lose her license. They don't get into the ethics complaint. And now that I see Robert's here, we're going to get into this ethics complaint to kick off Saturday Night Live stream with Viva and Barnes. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. Robert, how you doing?
Good.
Oh, man. Okay, so look, I think a lot of people are not going to know that we're live Saturday, because I think we spread it everywhere. I posted it on the community tab, Twitter. I missed Facebook, locals. So people tuning in tomorrow might just see this, but it'll be better than nothing. They can rewatch tomorrow, Sunday night. Happy Mother's Day in advance, everybody. Robert, Kim Gardner. Okay. What was I about to say? I know I had to look into this, because when I was reading the media coverage, I didn't understand what they were talking about. They were accusing her of ethics complaint in the context of an investigation of then governor Eric Greitens. When I looked into it, everything came together. And you'll fill me in if I'm missing any of the details of the Greitens scandal. But Greitens was Navy SEAL, Republican, by the way, just for anybody who wants to, put confession through projection in work when Kim Gardner says that these are attacks on her from political enemies to remove her from office. It is exactly what she did with Eric Greitens, from what I can understand. Navy SEAL, Republican, first Jewish governor of Missouri. If that changed, I don't know why they mentioned that in Wikipedia, but apparently it's relevant. And he put in some plans and some policies that upset the unions. He put in some plans that, seemed to maybe come, I don't know, it was to restrict certain gifts, whatever. He came with policies that people didn't like. Shortly into his governorship, apparently he couldn't keep his pee-pee in his pants, had an affair, and the woman with whom he had an affair apparently accused him of blackmail. He took pictures of her and was threatening to, blackmail her if she mentioned his name, yada, yada. Kim Gardner investigates. She hires a private investigator for whatever the reason. You'll tell me if that's standard protocol. And basically, from what I understood, gave the investigator notes to basically say, this is what we need to find, bullet point notes, which she never disclosed to the defense, to the accused. She didn't communicate a bunch of documents. Her investigator ended up lying under oath. She ended up inducing her investigator to lie under oath to provide false answers to court. Failure to disclose exculpatory evidence or evidence that could mitigate the charges. The expert was ultimately indicted, 7 charges of felony perjury, among other things. And there was an investigation into her. And now 3 years later, this is the ethics complaint against her. And it really seems that, first of all, what she is saying people are doing to her is exactly what she did to Greitens. And what she did to Greitens is exactly what she did to the McCloskeys. What am I missing?
That basically sums it up. I mean, and have you detailed the ethics complaint that's now been filed against her in the Missouri Supreme Court?
So, I mean, I briefly went over it in the video. I mean, it's 73 pages, but the bottom line, I mean, I say it's repeating the same stuff over and over again. She induced witnesses to lie, which is unethical. She didn't stop them when they were providing false answers that she knew were false, which is unethical. She didn't disclose evidence, which is unethical. I mean, I think that's, but for some of the details as to who the players are, I mean, I think that's the essence of what anybody really needs to know.
Yeah, what's extraordinary about this is, You have a county prosecutor, because that's who she is, the St. Louis County prosecutor, elected only by St. Louis, not elected by the state of Missouri, investigating the governor of the state. So that's the first anomaly. The second peculiarity that really shouldn't quite be within her jurisdiction outside of different circumstances than were present here. The second issue is that she is his strong political opponent, an adversary, and represents groups that are strongly politically opposed to him. So you have a conflict of interest at the core of the case. Then the third aspect is that you have, she was backed by George Soros. Soros has made a direct effort to influence America's criminal justice process by ways that if the European Commission on Human Rights wanted to apply consistency with its adjudication about corruption in criminal justice, like it wants to do to, say, Russia or other countries, then they should be outraged by what has been going on by Kim Gardner's office especially, but don't expect to be hearing from them anytime soon. And then fourth, the hiring of a private investigator, not just a private investigator, but from a completely different state. Went down and talked to him in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. What is she doing that? How did she meet this person? What are they aligned to do? And what she did was conspire with him to set up the governor of the state and get him removed using a criminal prosecution to politically embarrass him based on alleged personal conduct that ended up not being illegal conduct, as far as I can tell, in terms of where the evidence ultimately showed. And then when she got caught doing so, let him take the rap, the private investigator, because they always, rat out their own, and basically commissioned the perjury, suborned the perjury, supported the perjury, then covered up the perjury. This is extraordinary. This is not like if you looked at the ethics complaints against, say, Sidney Powell or Rudy Giuliani or Lynn Wood. They have nowhere near the factual evidence they have against Kim Gardner, and it is extraordinarily and exceptionally rare for an ethics board to ever do anything about corrupt prosecutors, particularly the politically protected corrupt prosecutors. But what it was, their conduct was so egregious and the evidence of it so convincing that they didn't have much of a choice without looking like political hacks. And that's why I think she's in serious trouble. You don't see 73-page ethics complaints filed in a state Supreme Court against an existing prosecutor with the kind of evidentiary detail present here unless subsequent consequences are coming.
And incidentally, for anybody who might be interested, apparently all the charges against Greitens, or I might be mispronouncing his name, apparently all the charges were dropped anyhow. And the KS, who initially brought charges of extortion, didn't have any of the pictures she alleged he took. Ultimately had no evidence of the charges. And so if exoneration is worth anything, all the charges were dropped.
But for those who don't know, he had to resign during the middle of all this because of the political effectiveness of it. So it was a hit job at work, but it gives you an idea. When you look at the Spygate scandals and you look at the federal law enforcement authorities hiring private actors to go out and dig up a lot of the dirt and then report the dirt and pretend they're independent private actors when they're really government agents in disguise, you see a mini example of it, that this is a template. People often think, Barnes is just making this stuff up about government's up to this bad thing or that bad thing. This is a perfect example. Now the evidence is in and it's meaningfully not, can't be really disputed at this point. That's why she had to go the political route with confession through projection of accusing everyone else of what basically, this is what Soros prosecutors are trained to do. This is why he backed who he backed. These are prosecutors weaponizing the prosecutorial process for politicized purposes and willing to scratch all of the legal and ethical and professional rules that are supposed to limit and constrict their conduct.
It is. I mean, it's over the top. The detail. I mean, it's a 73-page ethics complaint. It goes through the excerpts of the transcripts. It goes through the specific answers, which were apparently, the investigator said, I never took notes during that meeting. He took notes during the meeting. He never examined someone. He examined someone. Like black on white stuff. And the knowledge of what it ended up looking like from the way it's described is that Kim Gardner drafted bullet points for the investigator to go out and now you know what you have to prove type thing. And go get this out of the witnesses, and didn't disclose any of this to the defense as she should have. I mean, I will see what the defense is. Based on her lawyer's public statement, it sounds weak and sounds like there is no defense, but everyone's saying Soros back, she's going to walk. What do you think is going to be the outcome of this?
There's two major problems. One is the evidence is just overwhelming. The second is the Missouri Supreme Court is not a liberal political Supreme Court. So that's her two big problems: the overwhelming nature of the evidence, and the Missouri Supreme Court not being a political backer of her. Greitens, by the way, I think he's interviewed me before. He was either on Newsmax or One American News Network, but he's now running for the U.S. Senate in Missouri. So he's going to be back in the political limelight himself and have some political power, potentially going down the road. So I think the politics align against Gardner. I think that she just got caught red-handed. But it tells you this looks like protocol. This looks like custom and practice. That this was a way to set somebody up and to try to get away with it. And she just got caught, and she got caught so badly, the system of justice. I mean, this is going to contaminate every case in St. Louis potentially that she's involved with. So
some people were saying that in the comment section of the video from today. What implications could this have on every case that she's been involved in? Can people go ask for revisiting, re-examining of the evidence? What might have not been disclosed to an accused?
Absolutely. I mean, look at a lot of the cases when a cop gets caught systematically framing somebody, it sets up all their prior cases. In fact, there was a scene from City on a Hill, good show on, I think it's either Showtime or HBO, that's about Boston in the 80s and early 90s. And Kevin Bacon, the police officer, portrays a Fed, a very accurate portrayal, in my view, of a lot of your FBI guys. But they're trying to purge all the corruption in the Boston FBI office. And he makes clear that if they try to kick him out, he'll disclose everything that will contaminate all of their cases for 20 years. So that is commonly the case. It's commonly why they try to cover these cases up, or try to get a quicker resolution. But Gardner just refuses. I mean, this is somebody who had to be removed from the state court because of her unethical conduct in the McCloskey prosecution.
Yeah, it's what she did in Greitens. I mean, it's virtually identical, mutatis mutandis, to what she did to the McCloskeys. A weaponized prosecution to raise money off of it, instructing another investigator. This one, I guess, might have been a state investigator, not a private one, to basically fabricate the evidence. And then when they get caught, I guess they charged them before, but then charge the accused with evidence tampering when it was they that tampered with the evidence. It's I say it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. The only question is, on the one hand, is anything going to happen, and what implication is it going to have on the one hand for the McCloskeys? Because I predict those charges have to get dropped sooner than later. This is just adding a little bit to that belief, but to the system in general in Missouri.
Oh, yeah, and to liberal prosecutors and Soros-backed prosecutors across the country, because this gives you an example of their template of how they operate, and it's deeply disturbing. It's highly unprofessional, highly unethical, not unique, unfortunately, to state or federal prosecutors or lawyers defending them, but so proven here that it's going to be very difficult for her to escape responsibility and accountability.
Now, Greitens, there was one thing I didn't get into. I didn't fully understand it, and I'm not sure that it was relevant. Greitens was ordered to repay some donations or something along those lines that the campaign had raised, and I didn't understand it as to whether or not it was a sign of any form of guilt in terms of any investigation that was brought against him during his tenure. So apparently, it was the second or first shortest governorship in Missouri. But are you familiar with any of the other issues that plagued his short tenure?
Usually, I mean, he was a target in my view, but that was kind of evident from the get-go. But a lot of Republicans were slow to the uptake as to what was going on, and giving back donations is pretty commonplace. So, anytime a controversy arises, somebody says, "Oh, I'll give back that person's donations." Happened in the Harvey Weinstein context, Steve Wynn context, a wide range of contexts. So that usually has no legal significance.
Oh, and by the way, the one thing I failed to mention, which was why maybe Eric Greitens was such a target of wrath. He's an apostate. He was Democrat, and he left the party and became a Republican. And apparently, if Dave Rubin's life experience shows anybody who's thinking of becoming an apostate one thing, it's that you become a very big target, because one does not just leave the party, so to speak.
Well, and you're talking about a young 44-year-old Navy SEAL, a state that, at least not these days, but used to be a swing state. He was considered a future presidential contender. So that's why they needed to take him out. And that's why he was so heavily and aggressively targeted. And, you know, it raises questions about the Matt Gaetz case and other cases. We're seeing a pattern of political targeting that is the kind, you know, another example maybe of confession through projection. Listen to what the U.S. State Department says about how Russia targets people. They may be talking about themselves more often than not.
Well, when Nancy Pelosi came out and explained the wrap-up smear in articulate detail, it was quite clear she's speaking from experience and probably not as the victim of it. But okay, well, that's it. I mean, we'll see. And the timeline for these ethics complaints, does she file a written response, and is that written response public? And is there a public hearing? How does it work? Do you know?
It depends. It depends. Each state has its own ethics procedure. So sometimes there's confidentiality, sometimes there's not. So it depends on the state's internal rules and how that process goes forward.
Okay. And I tell you, the one big problem, when Greitens, just by virtue of having an affair, it's a personal issue, but man, does it open the door for a bunch of stuff. And when you can't keep it in the pants, it just causes problems. And, you know, ordinarily these would be private problems, but politics is the dirtiest industry on earth. So when you make a mistake, adversaries pounce.
It's Berea's principle. You know, show me the man, I'll find you the crime. There's very few people that can survive a microscopic scrutiny, especially people that tend to seek political office. They tend to be of a certain personality type, be driven by certain instincts or goals or ideas or other things that, you know, their virtues often can be their vices. And that's what you know, I find it just more problematic that this is just a method of operation in general, that this kind of weaponizing the political and prosecutorial and police process to target political adversaries is something that's supposed to be Soviet and Stasi in nature, not American in character, but it increasingly, unfortunately, is in some parts of the country.
Oh, sorry. John Law said, did he actually have the affair? Apparently, he actually had the affair. His wife and he made amends. They subsequently got divorced in 2020. But yeah, the affair was, people have affairs. And if I just brought up another question, another chat, didn't hurt Bill Clinton, but it hurt Bill Clinton. It just didn't end Bill Clinton because the tolerance for infidelity is not an equal bar when it comes to both sides of the political aisle.